In April 1969, an audio tape captured Richard Nixon authorizing his envoy, Henry Kissinger, to deliver a very specific message to North Vietnam. The message was that the commander-in-chief was completely unhinged. This approach came to be known as the Madman Theory. The core premise is that if you project extreme instability and threaten your opponents with apocalyptic violence, pure terror forces them to the bargaining table. Fast forward to the present day. Financial markets and political pundits routinely apply this exact same strategic framework to Donald Trump's aggressive foreign posture. For a threat to be credible, the opponent has to believe the sender is actually willing to pay the price of following through. If the action is so extreme that it would cause the sender as much geopolitical or economic damage as the receiver, the bluff becomes transparent. When a leader is forced to actually carry out an extreme threat just to prove they weren't lying, the primary goal of deterrence has already been lost. To understand why this strategy breaks down under pressure, we have to look at the first critical variable of deterrence, the communication channel. Nixon executed his Madman Theory through secret, private back channels. This gave him a vital structural advantage. If North Vietnam called his bluff, he could safely back down without losing face on the world stage. Compare that historical execution to a modern approach, where extreme threats are delivered in entirely public forums. When a leader makes a bluff out in the open, the pressure to execute it skyrockets to avoid looking weak. The exit ramp disappears, locking the leader into a corner and making an accidental war highly probable. The second variable required for a successful bluff is the baseline economic footprint of the target nation. On the left is mid-20th century Vietnam, an isolated, sparse node in global trade. On the right is modern Iran, a massive, highly interconnected central node. Striking it today instantly triggers major global energy supply disruptions. We know exactly what these supply disruptions look like for everyday citizens: rationing, rapid inflation, and paralyzing energy shortages. A modern geopolitical bluff against an interconnected nation carries catastrophic global economic risks. The sheer scale of that blowback makes the threat inherently less believable to the adversary. And the final critical variable is domestic buy-in. Closed autocratic societies have a distinct operational advantage in reading the internal politics of democracies. They closely monitor public opinion to locate and exploit political fractures. In the 1960s, North Vietnamese leadership recognized they didn't just have to fight the U.S. military, they could wait for American public opinion to fracture. They saw that the human cost of the war became visible on evening news broadcasts. The internal pressure for a withdrawal intensified. This same logic applies today. An adversary can see that a massive escalation is impossible to sustain when only a third of the voting public supports the initial conflict. Without unified domestic backing, a democracy cannot sustain the scale of force required to execute a massive threat. To an observant enemy, the posturing is transparently hollow. There are historical moments where erratic or aggressive posturing superficially appears to yield positive results. Apologists frequently point to Ronald Reagan's forward nuclear posture in the 1980s, or Vladimir Putin's pause on full-scale invasions during the Trump administration as concrete proof that the strategy works. The sample size for these events is incredibly small. We are looking at highly circumstantial scenarios rather than direct cause and effect. Mistaking pure coincidence for strategic causation provides a terrifyingly thin evidential basis for conducting high-stakes, nuclear-age statecraft. We can look back at the original Nixon-Kissinger timeline to evaluate the actual historical outcome of the Madman Theory's invention. The strategy devolved into feral, illegal bombings in neighboring countries. It yielded zero concessions from the adversary and effectively destroyed America's moral standing. 4 years after concocting the theory in the Oval Office, the enemy successfully captured Saigon anyway. Tens of thousands of American casualties occurred while this supposedly brilliant strategy was in active effect. Believing that chaotic leadership equals strategic genius requires a dangerously flawed misreading of history. Global statecraft does not reward leaders who simply act erratically.